to fill?
I just want to thank Alicia for just doing an amazing job with Ignite today, and Chris Spade for coming in at the last moment to teach an amazing class. Nice. And everyone else who's been leading things. Thank you. I can't hear anything. I don't know if it's just me.
Okay.
Oh, was I frozen? Oh, okay. So I was saying, let's get one more bucket fill or one more piece of gratitude, please.
It's Gary Smith here, Old Republic. Just real happy that Chris Spade is in a relationship.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So, Chris, we love you, man. Sexy Spade. Anybody that may have been interested, I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, he's off the market now. Sorry about your loss. All right. So a nice little reminder as far as the upcoming training and events. We have KW Command every Thursday. August 20th is the next one at 2 p.m. with our very own Clarissa. Ashley's Coming Together series is going to continue as well with our scripts practice Tuesdays through Thursdays. The new version of Ignite, I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback about it. So to the facilitators, thank you so much. And to those engaging, thank you obviously as well. So that's going to be every Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. And then our wealth building with Linda McKissick, Thursday, September 1st. So please mark your calendars for that one. It's 11 a.m. to noon. So it's 1 hour in which you're going to be hearing from Linda McKissick, who is ambiguously known for creating $1 million consistently every year in passive income. So I don't know about you, but it's a very simplistic model. It does, full disclosure, it talks about the Keller Williams profit share model. So obviously that's whenever you're feeling compelled to share your positive experiences, you feel that other people are struggling, maybe not getting the guidance that they need, invite them over to one of our trainings, invite them to our office, whatever that looks like. If you think that some people are needing some support, Linda will be talking about the value proposition that she's offered to be able to create $1 million, well over $1 million every single year in passive income. So let's see. Never have I, oh no. Oh, that brings back regrets. So the game Never Have I Never is getting to know your fellow Metro agents. So this will be, next Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Cool, at 6 p.m. So make sure to please complete the questionnaire. The link is posted in the chat box on our Facebook page. So this will be a great, super fun event. Next up, let's see, I believe Broker Bob, take it away. You've got some launch and growth coaching updates.
Broker Bob.
BB.
I am here. Sorry, guys. We're going to skip any updates for broker stuff because you got to listen to me for risk management. But we got a whole list of stuff. So when I ask the launch and growth coaches to send me weekly stuff, I get it. So we got a lot of great stuff going on in the coaching program. We are getting much more activity. Thank you. Everybody, you're working really hard and you're powering through COVID. Mandy Gonzalez got her first BRE signed. She's in growth with Alicia. Michael Camarena graduated from launch with a $1.1 million listing sold over the appraised value, by the way, and enrolled in growth with Coach Carl. Matt Williams is 5 weeks into launch coaching with Coach Carl and took a second listing on Tuesday, August 18th. Brad Darlington, new to KW Metro, joined the launch with Coach Carl. Great job, Brad. You made a great pick there. Of course, all of our coaches are fabulous. Marwan Khalil opened his second escrow on Coach Carl's team, and it's on a HUD home. As many of you know, HUD properties get a lot of activity. Marwan really closed the deal on that one. Cyril Sparks closed an escrow and opened a new escrow with Coach Corey. Chris Ross dominating follow-up with 2 listings coming soon. He's with Coach Corey. Michael Tran sold his second listing and graduated from launch coaching with Clarissa and Barbara. And then Rob Jones submitted his first offer with the help of Clarissa and Barbara Quentin Wells got a second BRE signed. He's also with Clarissa and Barbara. And then Hope Harkness got her first contract signed through an outbound referral, thanks to Clarissa and Barbara helping. That's it. Back to you.
Ooh, awesome, awesome. So great momentum. And just a key point, I want to invite you guys to Scripts if you haven't already been. Today we got to hear some wonderful insight from Vinny in regards to managing expectations with his clients, sharing some of his wins over the past experiences, and Paul Tolentino, in which he's talking about 3 listings in 3 weeks of being newly licensed, and he got to share his little script. So if you did not hear that, make sure to watch the recording. All right. Next up, would love to turn this over to our Social Equality Task Force. Not yet. I'm looking at the wrong slide. Amy, I love you. Sorry, I'm not quite yet. Delayed gratification. So let's get the update from Movement Mortgage. Eddie. Edward. You're muted, bud.
We can't hear you.
No. Okay, we'll come back to you, Eddie. But otherwise, I wanted to direct you guys, if you can, Eddie, to post that link in the chat box. So today during Scripts, Eddie provided a huge nugget of value for you guys, in which a lot of people that we're hearing that are waiting for the market to change, he was able to show a graphic that literally talks about, he just posted it. Thank you, Eddie. Basically saying what would happen by waiting for prices to drop. So what it would look like for prices to drop, but the interest rates to go up, and the total savings is really negligible in regards to waiting. So it really does. Yes, go. You can explain it better.
All right. Yes. So Stephen, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a mortgage coach analysis. I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but it's got a lot of really great in-depth information on it. We actually went over it in Judy's her class that she has on Friday nights. And it's great. It's a 10% reduction in price versus a 1% increase in interest rate, and just a comparative analysis, taking a look at a whopping $30 in monthly payment savings versus thousands and thousands of dollars that you would save by reducing the principal so much quicker with a lower interest rate. So it's a link to the analysis. A lot of people have looked at it because I keep getting pop-ups. But feel free to share it and put whatever you want in your comment section in it. And it's just a great conversation piece. If you need an update on it and you're looking at a condo versus a house, that's a $6,000 house. I can also do a condo. Just let me know and I can switch up the numbers for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, let's pass it on over to our very own escrow company, also doing very well with the net sheets. So you can ever compare and contrast how you can help a client profit more just based on the listed sales price ratio compared to any other agent, which their average listed sales price ratio is less than ours. So if you ever want to show how they can profit more by working with you, A+ Escrow is a great resource for those net sheets. So Justin, what updates do you have for us?
Hello, hello. Not many industry updates. Everybody's just still plugging away as usual. I just wanted to obviously congratulate and thank everybody for your continued business and your loyalty, and obviously for your understanding whenever we run into little snags with other parties or when it comes to us. We're all just plugging away and trying to get these deals closed as fast and smoothly for you and your clients as soon as possible. Love you guys. I just wanted to say hi, miss all your faces, and I'll talk to you soon.
Love it. Thank you, man. All right, now, Amy, right, to speak on behalf of our Social Equality Task Force update. Take it away.
All right. I don't know. Do I see all 4 of us here? Peggy, Ashley? I don't see Nikki. All right. Well, anyways, I guess I'll introduce us. Nikki was going to start us off. So I'm sure many of you are aware that Keller Williams International has created a social equity task force. And within the Southern California region, 4 of us within our market center have been elected to participate in that task force. So it's myself, Amy Bloom. We have Peggy, who is here. Pegs. You guys can all see her, Ashley and Nikki Francis. So the four of us are going to be the liaisons. And basically what this task force is it allows us to collaborate with Keller Williams and with our market center to bring ideas together so that we can all engage in social equity as a whole. So what our attempt is to do is to work with you guys. We want to hear from you. We want to know what your needs are, what your ideas are, what your concerns are, just to be a vehicle that we can express those to Keller Williams International and especially to our region, and just collaborate back and forth as to where we're going with all of this. So we are strictly going to be the vessel to practice that constant, working together and getting that information back and forth. So
Excellent. Excellent.
Peggy, Ashley, anything
Can you
you
hear
want to
me?
add? Yeah.
Am I okay? Peggy Rose, and I just want to let you guys know that this market center has been phenomenal for my awareness of my own prejudice, stereotypes, racism, etc. in every area of my life. I want you guys to know how amazing it's been for me, and in order to dig in deeper for myself to grow more in this area and seeing as our market center growing so that we can better serve our clients. I want to participate in this social equity, this task force so that, there can be some kind of a cohesiveness to all of this that we're trying to do here, with every aspect of how you guys are bringing it to the forefront for our awareness, not only personal growth, but our business growth. And that's my goal in being involved in this. So Ashley, you want to share?
You guys know I've been doing a lot of the come together calls, and I think this is a year where, as a planet, as a country, as a company, we all have the opportunity to grow, and areas we need to grow have been exposed, and one of them is in social equity on many different levels. So I said at the beginning of this, I thought our market center would be a transformative force in this space, and it's proving to be. So I'm just so grateful and proud to be in business with all of you guys, and the door's open. Let's go make an impact.
Love it. And then just on behalf of Nikki, because I believe she's in Vegas right now enjoying some family time with her grandkids. So we'll be able to hear from her later on. And as these developments and as the social equality task force reaches out, again, we want that inclusion. And so they're the lady leaders that are the ones really pushing through with those endeavors. So thank you all for participating, and thank you for leading that endeavor. Let's see, next up, property pitches, please. Let's talk about what you have coming soon. Where are those next properties at? Who's got some stuff coming soon?
I have a property coming soon, Maria Pena. I have one coming soon, hopefully in the next 7 days. It is in 91950 Bonita Creek is the development. It's a 2-bedroom with a loft, approximately 1550 square feet, and it will be in the low 500s, and the HOA is approximately 145.
Wow, great job, awesome. All right, what else do we have? And also keep in mind, right, if you want to post these also to the interoffice page for our prospecting kings and queens and everybody in betweens, make sure to post those as well so we have those listed. Great job, Maria. What other coming soons do we have? All right. Well, for anybody that may have not spoken up or did not unmute themselves in time, make sure to post those to the interoffice page. Same thing for the buyer needs. So I will continue the shout out in case I haven't already. So it really is important that whenever you have buyer needs to make sure to post that to the interoffice page as well. Susan Gedstad, she gave a shout out to Sarah Smith with the Lee Home team because Sarah was able to find an off market in Coronado for Susan's buyer, just because Susan said, I've got a buyer out there who wants to prospect around it. Sarah brought the deal together. Not only that, but Sarah was also able to prospect and has a know of a coming soon property by calling around a certain complex in Tierra Santa. So if anybody thinks cold calling is dead, ask the people that are getting results from it. So those buyer needs, make sure to post those to the interoffice page as well. And now for the feature of this hour, our very own broker Bob. Can you keep us out of jail?
What does that say?
I can't tell. It says knockoff training gym, something like that.
Broker Bob, just so you know, Broker Bob was celebrated by at F45 with 400 classes attended.
Great
The
job.
top in their gym, and I said, not bad for an old guy. I'm on Eve's heels though. All right, guys, we're going to do a little risk management today, but it's actually, I'm going to teach you some forms. So we'll go over the agenda, but these forms, you want to pay attention because there's forms you're going to need to get some of these offers, because you guys, I know you're beating out a lot of multiple offer bid situations. So there's some actually car forms that you need to be aware of that will help you out there to try and get some of these offers. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, Evie?
Got it, Broker Bob. It's all yours.
And we'll talk about a few other things. So give me a while to set up.
I see it.
You guys see that?
Yep.
All right, and I'll leave the chat box open as well too. So I'll try and monitor that the best I can. All right. So we're going to cover a few things today. We're going to cover fair housing, about an issue that's come up in the media lately. Just a little quick thing on that. But we're going to go to form school since RDR, and some of you know what that is. And we're actually going to talk about escalation clauses, because we are seeing that more prevalent too, because you're doing whatever you can. I got some good news on that, so don't be afraid of it. And then I always want to remind people about Mark Miller's internal review and final review messages. Be aware of that, and read them, because we give great advice about what you need to do to bulletproof your transaction. But also, if you've missed anything on your initial either purchase agreement or listing agreement that needs to be corrected, he will make notice of that in the initial review. So it's very important to read those. So fair housing. The Fair Housing is a federal act in the United States intended to protect the buyer or renter of a dwelling from the seller or landlord for discrimination. The reason I'm bringing this up is because we're in a time where fair housing is being challenged in certain ways because of certain factions that's going on in the world right now. But its primary purpose is to prevent to prevent it being unlawful to refuse to sell, rent, or negotiate with any person because of that person's inclusion in a protected class. So on the federal level, the protected class is, and you guys probably all remember this from your real estate exam, race or color, religion, national origin, familial status or age, and it includes families with children under 6, under the age of 18, and pregnant women, disability or handicap or sex. So that's the federal level. California, of course, being the innovator, took it a few steps further. We added ancestry, creed, gender, identity, medical condition, sexual orientation. I believe medical condition came from the HIV/AIDS epidemic. Sexual orientation, source of income, occupation, other arbitrary discrimination. So arbitrary discrimination is very subjective, could be very open. We've discussed this actually on the statewide call with CAR about arbitrary discrimination. Arbitrary discrimination could be, we just didn't like the way they looked, or they looked like they wouldn't take care of our house. It would be a little more challenging to prove, but it could go to fair housing and have a case made. So you just got to be aware of what these are, very important. But I'm going to show you where it appears with real estate agents, because the most common mistakes that agents will make, and this is in their marketing and advertising. or when they pitch a listing at Caravan, walking distance to best Mexican restaurants, gay bars. Now, why would that be a violation of fair housing? You can unmute yourself.
It's saying that, hi, Broker Bob.
Hi.
It's saying that walking distance, that could be discriminatory to somebody who can't walk, or, and then also gay bars, that's focusing in on orientation, and the Mexican restaurants. It's just so divisive.
Yeah. It's a disability or handicap if someone can't walk. And then, of course, sexual orientation and ancestry. You got it. Right. Okay. Lots of gays live in the area. Well, that's a protected class. Surprisingly or not, you know, not every state adopts this. You know, we just passed the LGBT. You can't. The Supreme Court just ruled that you can't fire someone for being gay. Thank God. But gays in certain part of the country can be discriminated against for housing. And because I'm part of a group, the National Association of Gay and Lesbian Real Estate Professionals, it was very eye-opening for me to, you know, to hear other people's journey through their work, that they could be discriminated against because they're gay and people don't have to sell to them. Close to all great churches and or synagogues. That goes to religious beliefs. Perfect for the handicapped to live in. Most neighbors make great money. Why would that be?
For all those people who don't make great money.
Yeah, it's about income occupation. You know, well, we don't want them in our neighborhood because they're, you know, they don't, we see a lot of this in areas where developers will have to put in low income units. So instead of paying for to put in the low income, that they cater to people with low income, they actually will just pay a fee. Like every high rise downtown, the developer just paid a fee because they didn't want to put in low income units. I put a lot of gay bars, hip and trendy. To me, it's a plus, but that's a personal preference. What can I say? I want to know how close it is. I'm less than 10 steps from Moe's, by the way, and I never go. That doesn't make any sense. So here's why I'm bringing up fair housing, because there's been a lot of talk about this. You've heard about on social media, Facebook talks about, can you use master bedroom? So NAR met about this. They talked about it, and several MLSs have contemplated making changes to it. But at this time, NAR sees no reason that real estate professionals cannot use the term master bedroom, as there is no evidence that has any historical connection to slavery or any other kind of discrimination. That's the most recent statement from NAR. Can this change down the road? Possibly, but I just wanted to make you guys aware, because I know a lot of people have mentioned this on social media, that you can't use the term master bedroom. However, if I was to pitch a listing for my own personal beliefs, I may not want to use the term master bedroom. I might come up with something different for me, but know that it's not a violation of fair housing yet, okay? And it probably won't be even discussed during this administration. So that's it on that. Now we're going to go to form school. And the reason why I want to go to form school is because these are the kind of the top 9 forms that come across that a lot of people aren't aware of, or they're unfamiliar with them, or maybe they just didn't even know they existed, or they didn't know that a form included something. So the first form I want to bring up is the seller's purchase of replacement property. So you got to list, you got a client and you have a listing and the seller wants to sell and go buy. But the challenge is in this market, and many of you are facing this, is that you are trying to find them something to buy and you keep getting beat out. And here's what happens with a few people is when you do write the purchase agreement, you're not including the SPRP. You're putting the seller to agreement contingent upon seller finding suitable or replacement property. Well, that's very vague. And you could be forced to close escrow on that listing and the seller would be out of a home because they can't find a replacement property. But this form will protect you in case the seller can't find a place to so you can take your listing to market, put it on the market, and then you can go out and search for a replacement property for that seller. So I'm not going to go through how to fill out the form because every transaction is different. But I want you to know that this form is available. So if you have a listing that the seller wants to go out and now buy something else, this is the form you use. And when you're discussing this with the potential seller, I know a lot of you get asked that question. Well, what if we want to go buy something? Oh, great, Mr. Seller. We have a form called the SPRP that will protect you, and it will allow us time for you to go out and get into escrow with the property. Now, a sell and a buy is a tricky situation. There's probably a lot more stress than just a regular sale and a regular buy because you're trying to match up timelines, and it can be very complicated at times. And I've actually seen agents lose their shisa over it because it can be stressful. So you got that listing and you got the SPRP with the contract that you consummated with that buyer, but now they got to go out and buy something, but they can't buy it until they close escrow on their existing property. Well, that's where this form comes into play. So you're going to incorporate in your purchase agreement the COP, contingency for sale of buyer's property, which basically states, hey, this buyer wants to buy your house, but they also have a home they're selling, and they have to sell that home in order for them to close escrow on this one. So we want to put a contingency in place to make sure that that other home is going to close escrow so that we can purchase this home. So again, won't go through the form because there's scenarios for every situation, but this is where, and timelines will be enacted where the buyer will then need to remove this as a contingency in order then to move forward. Okay, and anytime if you guys have any questions on this other than how to fill it out, you can always ask me. And then of course, prior to contract consummation, if you give Mark and I or your launch coach or your growth coach a heads up, in advance of writing, we can be aware and look out for it to make sure that it's done right.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the COP we use when our buyer is buying a place and has a place to sell, so we include that with our offer.
Yes.
And then the SPRP, where do we incorporate the SPRP?
You would incorporate it when you counter back to the buyers on your listing.
Okay.
So you're going to incorporate the SPRP into the counteroffer or the multiple counteroffer. And if there's a checkbox on the SPRP at the top that says this is incorporated into the counteroffer.
Okay. Do we make the SPRP available in the listing or only do it when we do the counteroffer?
I would, any offer you entertain, let them know that the seller is going to go out and find replacement property. So when we counter you back, we're going to include the SPRP. Don't let the buyer craft the SPRP. You as the listing agent need to craft the SPRP.
Okay.
Because you will know the nuances of that transaction.
Okie doke. And then what should be in our listing that lets everybody know there's an SPRP coming your way?
You can put it in confidential remarks.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this Russ?
Yes, it is.
Hi, my favorite high C.
Oh my God, it's true. in Massachusetts, you just write like, hey, it's subject to this and subject to that. Here you got like 85 things to do.
Welcome to California.
Amen.
All right. So you got an inventory challenge market, and you're working on getting offers accepted, but you just can't, you're having no luck. Is anybody having that issue right now? You can shout out, say, hell yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So why not start utilizing the backup offer addendum? Okay. And the backup offer addendum basically says, you know, if you lose out on the offer and they're in escrow with another person, well, let me be in first place because my buyers really want this house. So you could actually incorporate the backup offer addendum into your, let's say you're into, well, they've already accepted an offer. So you can then incorporate the backup offer addendum in your purchase agreement, or even in your counter offer if you wanted to. That will put you in, you can see section number 1 in backup position number 1, because that's where you want to be. And of course, you're not held to anything because it's contingent upon written cancellation of the previous contract that seller may be in. So the seller has to get out of the existing contract they're in or cancel or whatever, and that would put your buyer in the first position on that property. In other words, they don't have to go out and let you know that the offer, the agreement they were, or the escrow they were in canceled. Do you want to write another offer? You're already in that position, and you put your buyer in a favorable position because now they've got backups in position number 1 on properties if they still can't find anything. And you can always submit a withdrawal of offer eventually if you do find a place, but at least you've got enough irons in the fire to help you in this low inventory challenged market. Okay. Any questions on that?
Yes, I do, Broker Bob. It's Debbie. My question is, if we do find something, if we have that in place and it was accepted, we find another property that we want to write on, do we have to disclose that we have this in place when I write that new offer, or do I have to, what's the process on that?
Well, I'm going to tell you, do whatever you need to do to find a home for your buyer.
Roger that.
That's where I'm going to leave it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, I mean, if you put this backup offer addendum in and then you do write another offer, if that other offer is then accepted, then you can just put a withdrawal of offer for the backup.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Robert?
Hedging your bets.
The SPRP, would you use that if you're doing a 1031 exchange as well?
Yes.
Yes?
Give me the scenario.
Oh, I have a client who wants to sell his rental, and then he wants to buy another property.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay. I'm sorry. I had to think.
Yeah, he's
Doesn't
gonna,
matter whether it's a rental or a primary
he's
residence.
gonna buy a rental. Well, he's gonna buy it for a rental, and then after 2 years, he's gonna move into it, is what he wants to do.
Yeah, so it's contingent upon him finding a replacement property for that rental.
Right, so that's a good form for that. Okay.
Yeah. Investor or primary owner, you can always use it. Sorry.
Okay. Mhm.
Took me a while. My brain had to get caught up.
That's okay.
All right. So the PV, I'm just going to cover a few things. And I know that the PEDs, tracking them is a bit challenging because you're working on showing properties. And here's what I do know about the PV. Make sure you include them in your transaction record. That's the important part. But how do you manage your PVs? So Chris Spade has a really good way he's done it. Because here you have, let's say you have 5 buyers and you're just showing homes, but you don't have a transaction. You're not going to go create a transaction for every one of those buyers. So he created a file called new PEDs in zip forms. And in that file, new PEDs, he will go in and every home he's going to show that buyer, and he's got multiple buyers in the new PEDs. And so when he sends it to have them DocuSign, he sends one for every address because he doesn't want the listing agent to know what other homes that he's taken the buyers to. And then when he sends it to through DocuSign, it will say new PED to that buyer, and then they just digitally sign all those PEDs, and that's where they're stored. And then when you store them in there, then move them over to the transaction you finally get them into. Okay. That's all. Oh, and there is one section on the PED that I needed to cover. Sorry. Sorry, guys, I'm looking for the PED. Enough of these forms. Well, okay, so here's the question I get asked a lot. The question is, my buyers have 2 kids. Do I have to have them sign a PED? No. There is section 8 and 9 of the PED that references that says if they're bringing in children, they just list the children and they are verifying for the children by them signing the PED. And then you put the children's name in section 9. So I got that question a lot this week. So just remember that. Here's a form that a lot of you don't probably use, and it will help you. So again, low inventory market, you go out and marry a buyer with a seller. In other words, you found the property. Traditionally, you would take a listing agreement and do a listing agreement that will allow you to do the transaction, take that listing and then sell it to, and then connect the buyer with the purchase agreement. That's only if you want to put that property in the MLS. You have to do the listing agreement. Let's say you just want to bypass that and you just want to do a private sale and you don't care if it goes in the MLS. But you can use what we call the single party compensation agreement. So what this does, it allows you to go to a seller and say, hey, I have a buyer. They want to make an offer on your property. If I bring you this buyer, will you pay me a commission? Now, this only works if they're paying you a commission, not that the buyer's paying you commission, but the seller's paying you commission. If the seller's not going to pay you commission, then that's another step, so call me. But you wouldn't use the single party compensation because the way the SP form works, it basically says to the principal, which is the seller, hey, if I bring you a buyer, you'll pay me X dollars or X% of the sale price. And then also in the single party compensation agreement, under page 2, item 2, it confirms on 2B whether you're going to act as an agent for the principal exclusively, that's the seller, or you're going to act as a dual agent where you'll represent the buyer, tenant, and principal, or the broker's only going to represent the buyer, tenant exclusively. So let me cover each scenario. So 2B, you're just going to represent the seller. So let's say I have a seller that doesn't want to go to the MLS. You use the single party compensation agreement. Because if you take a listing agreement, it has to go in the MLS, unless you do an exclusion. because that's interferes with the clear cooperation policy. And then if you're going to represent both, you check item 2B2, where you can do dual agency. And I'm okay with that because you've done the hard work, you've got the buyer, you found the seller, you've basically created agency. So you can represent both and you can provide both people documents. But again, I need to know this. I need to have this prior to make sure I understand you're able to do this. And then 2B3 would be, you're just going to represent the buyer and not represent the seller. The challenge with 2B3, if you don't represent, if you're only representing the buyer and not the sellers on their own, when it comes time to get disclosures and information from the seller, like the TDS, SBQ, or anything that the seller needs to do, unless they know what they're doing, they're not going to be able to provide it. And then you end up providing the forms. And then by providing forms, you've basically created agency. You started acting as a fiduciary for that seller. So it's highly recommended just for the ease of transaction, and you're making sure your buyer is covered and the seller is covered, to do the dual agency. We've used the seller non-agency to some degree, but for the most part, that is created liability because then the seller doesn't provide anything to the buyer. And then the buyer's not getting disclosures, and they're not really understanding, they're not getting the stuff that the seller should provide, and the seller's refusing to provide it because they don't know what the heck they're doing, because these for sale by owners all know what they're doing. Anyway, I digress. So you'll use this single party compensation in that instance, and it's a really good form. And of course, Mark and I or anybody can guide you through on filling that out. The other two forms that are important to talk about, that is the biggest issue right now with COVID because of the moratorium on evictions. If you're going to have a tenant occupied property where the tenant is going to stay there, well, the tenant can only stay there if it's an investor owned and investor purchased property, because an owner occupant loan will not allow a buyer to buy a property unless that buyer moves in within 60 days. And the biggest challenge is if you close escrow on a property during a pandemic where there's no way to evict that tenant and the tenant refuses to leave, your buyer now has become a landlord, and they fall under California landlord tenant law. So it's really tough if you're going to have a tenant stay in a property after close of escrow, and you really need to consult with that buyer about what the ramifications are with that. So just be aware, if you show any tenant occupied properties, at least reach out to me and Mark in advance so that we're aware, so we can give you some best guidance on that so you do the right thing for your buyer. But this is the form that shows that the tenant's going to remain in the property, and they basically accept that tenant being in there. And then the tenant estoppel certificate is the verification from the tenant on a tenant occupied property that shows whose names, what lease they have, the name of the landlord, the name of the tenant, their current monthly rent, any deposits. It's signed by the tenant and put together by the tenant. So you need these on tenant occupied properties if they're going to remain in possession. So that gets missed a lot. So I bring that up in here just so you're aware of it. Here's just my second Corona form. I'm just going to go through. What we're finding is that the CVA is added to a lot of transactions or not. So it's listed on the purchase agreement as an additional document, but then it's not added in the documents. So be aware when we've already preloaded the CVA to show up on the section with additional documents. And then if you're not going to add it to the transaction, you need to remove it from that section. But here's the challenge. Even if what we're finding is some people are adding it and then sending it over, but they're not filling anything out. So basically is a moot form. It doesn't really mean anything if you don't fill out any boxes, because it's not really protecting anybody. And there's no way, the form's used to figure out what happens if there's a corona situation that the contract needs to be canceled because of either the buyer or the seller can't close escrow on it. And that's what the form's for. But we're finding a lot of people are adding it to the transaction, but not filling it out, or they're leaving it in the purchase agreement. They're not sending it over. And then it needs to have an amendment to exclude it because the lender will see it in there. And then the lender says, this form is supposed to be in the transaction. It's not on there. And then you're getting ready to close. And then you got to go back and do an amendment to the existing agreement and counter it out. So it becomes a lot more work at the end.
This is Dan. I have a question.
Yes.
So why are we defaulting to putting this in the contract then? Because it really is only important if section 4 or section 5 come into place. So then why are we defaulting to putting it in there?
Because originally when they all came out, it was highly recommended that we put it in there. And Mark and I will talk about this, but you guys need to know that it's there. Remember, Dan, you know what's going on, but there's a lot of brand new agents that come in that aren't familiar with these forms. So for you, I know you understand it, but there are some that don't know about this form. So we have to have it in there right now until CAR says, you know, you at least, and it's also there because you at least need to have the conversation with your principal and say, you know what, there's this form that protects, would you like me to add it in the purchase agreement? They need to know that it's available, because maybe they are a class that is at high risk. Let's say they're high risk because they're a doctor and they work in a ward with corona patients, and that doctor comes down with coronavirus and they can't close escrow. They would need to be protected in the transaction. So to do your fiduciary, you would need to at least say, hey, we have this form, we could add this to see if we can get it accepted in the transaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But for me, the question becomes, you know, this is, to me, it's like a creating awareness documents. Section 1, 2, and 3 are all creating awareness. Section 4 and 5 are if something were to come up in the future, right?
Yes.
So then by not checking anything and just signing it, we're acknowledging the awareness, even though we're not asking for an action. Doesn't that then make this form complete?
No, well, it makes it complete, but it doesn't really protect the person that might need to be protected in the transaction. Not only does
the recommendation is not, I mean, you're not going to know about section 4 or 5 until you're in the midst of the transaction. So other than creating awareness, there isn't a real reason to put this in for any document in advance, other than the conversation.
it's important to have the conversation, and you're asking the same questions that we discussed on the CAR Friday call with all the brokers across the state. And again, you guys, these
over at Virtuance. How are you?
I'm not, somebody
Good, I'm
needs to
just
mute
calling
their
to see if you
phone,
had-
please. I'm not the creator of the forum. I'm not, the only thing that's in charge right now, I tell this to everybody, is Corona. I'm not in charge. I'm just giving you the information of what you need to know to protect your clients at the best. And that's really where we are right now.
So what I'm saying here, Bob, is that the first part is really a separate informational. Then the second part should be handled once you're in that situation. And the first part is just general information. And this form should be divided somehow.
Well, send an email to CAR.
That form was.
That's why people are not filling it out, because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, the form was intended to provide the section 4 and 5 so that the parties could agree in advance what action they would take should a coronavirus event affect the transaction. So it's really a predetermination of how we would proceed should that happen. So that, not only is it describe the, the awareness in what sections 1, 2, and 3, like Dan said, but section 4 and 5 say, hey, if this comes up, here's what we agree to do in advance. And what it does by completing 4 and 5 is it changes the cancellation procedure of the contract. It shortcuts the cancellation procedure, but it also requires that if there is an event, that the party that wants to cancel provide that NUCC form to the other party. So.
Thank you, Mark. So yeah, I'm not the keeper of the corona. I'm just relaying the information on what you guys need to do to protect your clients and have the conversation. Hopefully this will end one day. Obviously we don't know when, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there, because I know how challenging this is right now. I know how hard you are working. I know how hard everybody is working in this industry, and as I said last week, we'll look back on this time and realize that we've all grown. Without growth, there's no pain. And right now there's a lot of pain, and there's a hell of a lot of forms. And I'm not happy about them, definitely not. So, and it's just making your guys' job harder, but we're in the midst of a pandemic. That's all I can say. So any questions on any of those forms, or did you actually learn about something today with that exact? Oh, no, we're not done. One more thing. Sorry, guys. This one's really important. Escalation clauses. So they're making their comeback. Escalation clauses, our corporate attorney used to say they can be considered constructive fraud and you can use your license, but we got to sell houses. So we allow them. You just need to be aware of, if you incorporate an escalation clause that basically says the buyer will go above the highest offer by X amount of dollars or whatever, you need to incorporate a couple of things just to make sure. One, can the buyer go that high? But what happens if you have an appraisal contingency and let's say it doesn't appraise? Then you need to figure out, well, what will happen if that happens? So you got to figure out if the buyer's going to pay the difference between the appraisal price and the purchase price, or pay up to X dollars, not to exceed a certain amount of dollars, or seller agrees to lower the purchase price agreement to be appraised value, or buyer and seller agree to split the difference between the purchase agreement price and the appraised value. So we have that approved language. It would be wise to use that if you're going to use an escalation clause, because you don't want to put your buyer in a situation where you use an escalation clause and then they have to enact the appraisal contingency and they can't release it. So that's important for that. Just know that, because I know you guys are facing with that right now. I'm hearing just horror stories about how many offers you guys are writing and how many homes you got to show and how many escrows you're losing out on. So now, any questions? Not one. Everybody's faded out.
You were great, Robert. So detailed. You answered all of the questions before we even thought of them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys sitting through another session of risk management and form school. And I hope that you start incorporating some of those forms, and definitely that backup offer addendum to put your buyer in first position might help you in this market. I think that's a great form. Okay. All right, you guys, it is almost closed. Nobody has any more questions. I am going to let you out of class early. School is dismissed.